Hello there, ATS EVS 105 students. Dr. John Schrage here, and I want to talk to you today about the kinds of things that don't really count as evidence about global warming. You know, all throughout this module I've been showing you all kinds of scary stuff about how the planet is warming and ice sheets are melting and the ocean is warming and sea levels are rising and all that kind of good stuff. But that's all hard stuff to actually experience in your day-to-day life. I mean, temperature trends on the order of 0.6 to 0.7 degrees Celsius over a century are certainly nothing anybody would notice. That would be the global mean temperature trend over the last 100 years or something like that. On the other hand, there are things in our lives that we tend to notice and think, man, is that what global change will look like? Is that what global change will feel like? Is that what we're going to be seeing? When something strange really happens, when some unusual warm period happens, when there's a heat wave or something, you can well imagine that people seek out meteorologists and they want to know, is this global warming? Well, the truth is, those kind of events don't really count. They don't really tell us much about global warming. And let me show you what I mean. This is actually coming from just a paragraph or two that comes on page 26 of your textbook, but it's actually a very important thing to understand with regard to what Creighton wants you to get out of these kinds of understanding science courses. They want you to understand what does and doesn't count as some kind of scientific evidence or some kind of support or whatever. Now, like I said, in this class, we've seen lots and lots of evidence that the Earth is warming. There's no lack of evidence in terms of climate statistics or something like that, but things that sometimes might seem like they would be evidence of climate change aren't necessarily evidence of the warming. But to understand why something like a heat wave is not evidence of global warming, let's make an analogy. Because I think sometimes it's hard to think about climate as clearly as we can think about things like money. So let's face it, we have a whole lifetime of thinking about money, and we're pretty good at it. And so let's make an analogy between what the global climate is doing, global warming, and what the stock market does. Alright, so what I did here is I just sort of faked some numbers for a couple years ago. I just faked as if there was some stock, okay? And this is the price of the stock over a few month period, or actually I guess it's supposed to be a year. It's supposed to look like those are the prices of the stock over 2014. And so it started off trading around $100 a share, and it's been going up and going down and so on. And it's got kind of a nice run lately of rising stock prices. And you can see that on the way that I made this here, it looks like sometime around December 17th, 2014, we hit a record. Okay, the stock hit a record high price. Okay, we can kind of picture all that. But what does hitting that record high price actually tell us? What do we know about that stock and its price and what its price is doing and what its price is going to be doing in the future and so on, based on the fact that it hit a record high? Well, I mean, one thing it could be telling us, does it tell us that it means that's the new normal? That's where this stock is now going to trade? If I were going to try to draw what this graph looks like moving forward, it's still going to be wiggling up and down because there's day-to-day price changes of the stock, but it's going to kind of be in general up near that new high. Another possibility, does that mean that this trend is going to continue? We've been going up for a while, we keep hitting new record highs, and we're just going to keep doing that for a while. We're going to keep trending upward. I don't know. Well, it might, but it might not. I mean, it's not necessarily the case that it'll do anything in particular. In fact, in this particular case where I was just sort of making some random numbers, I showed you that I made it so that after December 17th, the stock started going down. Okay? But it wouldn't have had to. I mean, it isn't like what goes up must come down. I mean, let's not resort to cliches here or something like that. The price wouldn't have had to come down. The reality is, one of the things you need to understand about this is that, when we're talking about the price of something like a share of stock or something like that, extreme events like it hitting a new high or hitting a new low don't necessarily tell us anything at all about what the stock is going to do in the future. Okay? There's actually no information there at all about what the future value of the stock is going to be just because it hit a low or just because it hit a high. Now, somebody with experience in finances and stuff like that might say, well, but the market tends to do this or the market tends to do that. Okay, and in the same way, we might someday be able to say something about the climate in the same way, but at first glance here, Truth is, hitting that high tells us nothing. It doesn't tell us it's going to keep going up. It doesn't tell us it's going to come down. It doesn't tell us it's going to stay where it was. And the same thing could be true if we were forgetting about finance for a little bit and thinking instead about climate. That's supposed to be the sunshine and thermometer on that slide there. Just kind of to help you know that now I'm talking about climate. Alright, but I'm using literally the exact same graph here. And let's say this is a measure of temperature. Now, I didn't think it all through, the fact that this is temperatures of like 100 degrees. I don't know, whatever. We could change the scale on the y-axis, okay? But, okay, this could be a graph of temperatures at some location. Alright, I can picture that. And let's say we just hit some record high temperature at that location. Does that mean that's the new normal and we're now going to stay up near that high temperature? Might. I don't know. Does it mean that this trend is going to continue and the temperature is going to keep going up and up and up at that location? It might, but more often than not, it doesn't really tell us anything. I mean, the temperature in this case, again, I'm just using the same graph, except instead of saying it's the stock price, I'm saying it's like the temperature at the station. Yeah, it might be going back down. Hitting the high doesn't really tell us much of anything about what hitting a record high temperature doesn't necessarily tell us much of anything about what the climate is going to continue doing in the future. So in the same way that it was with stock values, when it comes to climate extreme events, like a record high temperature or a record low temperature or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean anything about what is going to happen with the climate in the future. It sure feels like it should. It sure seems like a record-breaking high temperature should tell us something about how the climate is changing, but it doesn't. Okay? It doesn't actually tell us that's the new normal. It doesn't actually tell us that that is we're trending upward. It literally tells us nothing. Okay? Just to extend this metaphor between the stock market and climate a little further, this graph that I showed you here, this was just one company's stock. Okay? So this was the price of one share of some company's stock, and it goes up and it goes down. But what that one company's stock is doing doesn't actually tell us very much about other stocks. I mean, it might be related to the price of other shares, or it might not. I mean, as this share goes up, maybe other shares of other companies are going up too. For example, maybe it is kind of a boom time in the .coms or something, okay? And yes, this stock is going up, and so are other technology stocks or oil stock. Like maybe this is a car maker's stock, and other car makers, car sales are good, and all the stocks are going up. Okay, it might be related to other stocks, but it might not. Or in the same way, this is the temperature at some station. It might be related to the temperature at some other station as well. I mean, the temperatures right here might be related to the temperatures at some other station. Like the temperatures in Omaha are very closely related to the temperatures in, say, Lincoln or Des Moines or something, just because we're not that far apart. But the temperatures in Omaha aren't all that closely related to, say, the temperatures in London or Rome or Paris or something like that. They might be related, or they might not. In much the same way, I mean, they could actually be related in opposite ways. Let's go back to our analogy about the stock market. As the price of one share goes up, it could be because some other share is going down, where people are just moving their money from one company to another. So maybe the red stock is Coke and the green stock on this graph is Pepsi. And maybe for some reason people are moving their money out of Coke, but they're staying in the beverage sector. They're going to go now into Pepsi, or the other way around, or whatever. Or they're moving from Ford, and the price of Ford is going down, and moving into Chrysler, and that stock is going up. Okay? This can happen all the time, where people are staying within a particular sector, but they're moving their money from one company to another based on things like earning reports or something like that. And in the same way, we can have the same sort of thing go on with weather. Again, I've got the little temperature symbol there to understand. A trend upward at one station could be related to a trend downward at another. For example, maybe it's an unusually warm winter in Omaha. And it might be an unusually warm winter because cold air masses from the Arctic aren't coming down over Omaha. Okay? But those cold air masses up there are eventually going to move and be over Europe instead. Okay? Yes, it might be an unusually warm winter in Omaha, but it might be an unusually cold winter in Berlin. Okay? That would be a very normal thing where climate extremes can't kind of tend to cancel each other out. This could actually be opposite the way the climate anomalies are working in two different places. What we really would want to say if we were looking at this from a finance point of view is to see if we could find a bull market. Now, if you're not familiar with this term bull market, a bull market is a period of time when basically all the stocks are increasing in value. It's usually due to some kind of optimism about the future and so on like that, where everybody believes all these stocks are a good idea, let's keep putting more and more money into them, and all the stocks go up. But to find a bull market, you can't just look at one company's stocks, okay? You can't just look at Apple and know if the whole economy is getting better and the stock market is going up for all the companies. Maybe Apple's going up and everything else is going down, okay? A single stock would not be the right way to find a bull market, a period of time when all of the stocks are going up. You need to use the prices of lots of stocks. And that's what numbers, in case you didn't know that's how that works, that's how numbers like the Dow Jones Industrial Average or the S&P 500 and so on work. Is they are something like an average or a sum or something like that of the price of a larger number of stocks, a few dozen to a few hundred, depending on which of those indexes we're talking about. Yes, if the S&P 500 is going up, that means these 500 stocks are overall going up. Yes, some, Pfizer's going up while Dow Chemical is going down, or Ford is going up while Chevrolet is going down, but taken as a group, the whole thing is going up. That tells you something. Same with like the Dow or some other stock market index like that. Well, in the same sort of way, we're going to be using global mean temperature to look for global warming. Using a single station or what's happening at a single station to somehow try to come up with some sort of idea about global warming doesn't make any more sense than trying to think it's a good time to get in the stock market because Apple is up. Okay? One stock doesn't tell you what the market is doing, one station isn't telling you what the planet is doing. So if we're going to be looking for global warming, a single region where the temperature is going up doesn't really tell us much of anything about what the planet overall is doing. All right. This is why, going back to our analogy about finance, this is why it is a big deal when the Dow or the S&P 500 or whatever are going up. It means a big chunk of the U.S. economy, as quantified, described, whatever you want to say, by stock price, is increasing in value. And in the same way, this is why it's a big deal when global temperatures are going up. This isn't just, the storms were a little farther east this year, and so this part of the country didn't have such a cold winter, or whatever. No, this is globally. Those kinds of regional climate anomalies have averaged out, have canceled each other out. These kind of global climate trends help us see what the whole planet is doing. Oh, okay. So in other words, one area having an unusually warm winter, one area having an unusually cold winter, or whatever, doesn't actually tell us anything about the state of the global climate. It's only when we can take a large number of stations and represent the global mean temperature that we actually have information about what the global climate is doing. Now, an individual station having an above normal temperature certainly does drag the global mean temperature up, but not that much, right? I mean, thousands and thousands of weather stations are included when we compute the global mean temperature. Yeah, so if the stations in this part of the country are having an unusually warm winter, yeah, they're dragging the temperature up a little bit, but how much? I mean, there's thousands of stations. Yes, we've increased the temperature a little bit, but maybe someplace else has been decreasing the temperature, even if they aren't, even if there really is real warming happening at that location, it's just not moving the average all that much. Okay, this is why these heat waves and global warming, this is why record high temperatures are memorable. This is why they can have a big impact locally. And make no mistake about it, high temperatures, heat waves are important. You probably saw the part in the text about how thousands of people died in a heat wave in, I think the example they were using was 2003 in Germany. I forget. I was actually in Germany the summer that they were talking about in the textbook, though. It was awful. I had an apartment with no air conditioning, and I thought I was just about ready to pass out. It was so horrible. And they can have a big impact, heat waves can have a big impact on the ecology of a region. A few years ago in Nebraska, they had a really warm February, and all of the cherry trees, apple trees, and stuff like that all started blooming in February. Well, it was beautiful, and people were excited about the weather, but it was a disaster for the trees because there were no pollinators yet. All the bees and all that kind of stuff were all still hibernating or whatever that is they do for they weren't out yet. So all those trees were blooming, but there was nothing to pollinate them. There could be big social effects, there can be big ecological effects when we have heat waves and so on, but that doesn't necessarily tell us anything about global warming. We measure climate by long-term averages, which are not necessarily moved all that much by just like a single region and a single period having high temperatures. Crazy weather like that does make headlines. It can be, and make no mistake, those crazy weather events might be due to global warming, but they don't prove global warming. Crazy weather events are nowhere near as important for the long-term health of the planet as the overall trends in temperature that we would see like with global warming or something like that. Okay, let's go ahead and ask three questions real quick just to make sure you understood what was happening in this lecture. Question 1. The Shraki Oil Company stock just hit a record high value. This tells us that this is a good time to A, sell shares because the price is going to come back down, B, buy shares because the price is only going to keep going up, or C, there's not enough information here to make that decision. Okay, look at them over, follow one of the 3 links below this video, and you'll get some feedback before we move on to question 2.